had a complete reconstruction for $90,000. And there was a lot of discussion at one time whether or not we're actually going to close that street. So obviously, if we're going to close that street, we probably don't need to have complete reconstruction. So I would assume, Mr. Mayor, that tonight is about discussion, but we can finalize some of these numbers to ensure that every road out here is a road that we actually want to dedicate funds to. Is that correct?
And I think you can remember too, like that street, for example, if we don't do it, as we look at curb work and stuff, when we're talking when we do a street, we're going to do, like the last week we discussed, you can do a patching of the curbs here and there. Well, if it turns out we have extra money, when we get on the street that give you a longer length of curb, what really needs to be done, then we won't have to do that curb patch. We can, the engineer could move that money around and still put it all in the project and get things done.
And I don't think I have a problem with that. I guess my only concern is that I would almost rather have a little more of a buffer put into the other streets, because if we're gonna close that street, I think it's disingenuous at $90,000 down on that street. If we wanna add 10% on every other road because we think that's appropriate, I don't have a problem with that. At least talking about that. I would hate to have someone come back and say, wait a second, you guys approved $90,000 to reconstruct 65th Street and you're closing it down. I don't think that's.
And mind you, that list is there when it gets into the engineering, right. We start looking at all these streets, then a better determination.
But that was my only concern.
Okay, and it's a good question. I wish I could give you the answer right now. I don't know. I think where we stand was that our board had decided that we did not want to spend any money on 65th Street, and in lieu of figuring out somehow to get it paved or transferring it as we tried through our council's efforts to the jurisdiction of the township, which they're agreeable to take on, except for IDOT, we would close the street, and I think that's where our position is. No work's going to happen in the winter, and I have taken it upon myself to try to affect and get help to get this jurisdiction transfer from Indian Head Park to Township to pave 65th Street. Some people, I know perhaps in the audience had not been here for the discussion, but the 2nd Street north of the Walgreens off of Willow Springs Road, that has, leads in, it's on the west side of Willow Springs, and it leads in, it goes up to Laurel. The residents on the south side of 65th Street, that's their backyard. Well, that's Indian Head Park, and we discovered Indian Head Park boundary goes to the north edge of the street. So unfortunately, the street is ours. It's in terrible shape, and nobody in our town has direct need for it as a street. We have residents that walk there through, they cut over from Acacia and so forth, and perhaps we can change that into a walking area, a walking path, and block it off, and that certainly would affect the people that live up Laurel. There could be some kind of barricade that in the event the north entrance to Laurel is blocked, the fire department could crash through it with their trucks, similar to Indian Woods here off of Plainfield. But the proposal the township had was they would split the cost of paving with us, and they quoted to me that if they were, this was back last May and June, that included in their paving last summer, $30,000 project that they would split with us. And of course, that $15,000 is $15,000. We're here discussing how to pave the rest of our streets that people actually use from our town for vehicle traffic. It got to where the township suggested that they would take it on and transfer jurisdiction, and our council worked with the township council and hit a roadblock with the Illinois Department of Transportation, and that's where it sits. And I'm going to try to make some efforts to move that along for the roughly, I saw it here a minute ago, the distance for that 7/100ths of a mile, 0.07 there. So that's supposed to be, it's not 7/10, it can't even be a tenth of a mile. So 7/100ths of a mile of street. We'll see if we can do that. And you know, worst case scenario that we said, you know, okay, we've tried everything else, and we decide, all right, if we were to pass something and we could still go back to the township and maybe get the same deal that they had previously offered, if the board at that time is of a mind to do that, that would be something to do. I personally don't envision spending $90,000 to fix that street, and how we want to handle that in terms of what we anticipate the cost of whatever plan we approve and want to see, if it's through a referendum from the residents, I'll leave it to the trustees to suggest to me, you know, how as a board they would like to handle that. You want to take the 90,000 out of the 2.5 million, or leave the 2.5 million in there, and if we've got to do a little bit better job somewhere else, that's a cushion that's already built in.
Mr. Berry, it could be as simple as putting an asterisk next to that and indicate that, you know, this money may be reallocated to other streets in the event we decide to close the street or to transfer to another property. I just think it needs to be made a little clearer.
Okay.
Down the
That's a
road.
good idea, and that's something certainly we can do.
Those are my only comments.
Thank you. Very good. Trustee O'Loughlin?
Yes, one of my concerns was 65th Street, and that we had discussed. And the other thing too is I wanted to piggyback as far as what Tom had said, as far as the depreciation. You know, I think it's very important that we do start depreciating, so that way we do get the money 10 years, 15 years down the road, and not fall into the situation that we are today. And that the other concern is I just want to make sure that the figures that we are receiving are pretty close to accurate figures as far as what it's going to cost, so that way we seek a referendum for 2.5 million, and we really need 3.3 million. And that I know right now it's a great time as far as being cost effective because the interest rates is low, and that, but I just want to make sure that the numbers are accurate, and that, because we are estimating, we think that they are, but, you know, just be sure of those numbers, so that way we are getting the exact amount of money that we do want to borrow. And that, but I would be in favor of scenario 3 as well.
And that's a good point, and let me just ask, I know Frank has done a lot of talking about Ed and Amy and Brian, are you comfortable? I mean, you worked on it a little bit more closely and putting the plan together. Are you comfortable with the numbers from the village engineer?
Well, I would assume that our subject matter expert is reviewing with the engineer. I was told that they did. I would expect them, upon inspection of the engineering study, that we would get a detailed spreadsheet that would firm up the numbers. Because you're gonna have changes and variances in what needs to be done on each street. So, you know, am I gonna tell you that I think they're accurate completely? No, absolutely not. They're a stab in an estimate that was created that doesn't include the engineering costs and the legal costs associated with what we're gonna have to do.
We did,
So-
excuse me, we did build in, in talking with Ed and the engineer, they're both very comfortable. We did build in a little cushion for engineering and legal in those figures.
So, you know, I think we're gonna have to come back again,
So
when we have
pretty
engineering and re-communicate where we're at with the project totals. You know, we recently did a capital improvement project that, you know, we were at budget or under budget for the other one, and that went very well, so I would assume we would have a report pre-engineering, post-engineering, and then as the project is going by, I'm sure there's gonna be unforeseen things that come up where we either spend less money or more money that we'll need to talk about.
And just as the engineer was very comfortable with the numbers.
And it just, you know, I'm not an engineer, I don't pave streets, we hire professionals to do this. We have to trust that the professionals know what they're doing. And we've all dealt with these people before. You know, am I gonna stand here and tell you I know these are the exact figures, this is what it costs? No, because I don't do that for a living, and I don't think my job as a trustee is to go out and figure out what it costs to pave the street. I don't know that, and it's not my job to know that. We hire professionals to do that, and we have to trust that they know what they're doing, and that they put these numbers together, and these numbers are accurate.
Rich, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
See if I'm along. We've got this plan, and I think as I've heard, we have to do the core work, the engineering work. And so if we get a set amount, say the 2.5 million, that's what we're gonna spend, and if we're finding the streets are getting done very easily, we may do 2 more streets. And if we find they're not, we're running into problems, we may do 2 less streets. and move them to the crack fill. So this is the game plan, but it may shift a little bit.
Right, or like the engineer says, he doesn't really say two, like if it's going the other way, he doesn't really say two less streets. You know, evaluate these streets, maybe you just do a little something less to that street than you would, and then it will work.
But I know, Brenda, you said maybe if it comes to 3.3, what I'm hearing is that if we wouldn't go to 3.3, we would just do less work on the streets that we're doing. That may not be said right, but something to that effect.
It will all be
Stay within
around.
the 2.5,
Right.
that's gonna be.
And you're not gonna get the core and all that done until after you're gonna have to approve, or if you wanna go to a bond, and we have to do it by December, there's no way between now and then that any of that can be done. I mean, I confirmed that with the engineer today, and he said no. And I guess my estimate, when I said something about 30,000, it's more than 30,000 for all the engineering, when I look back at the paperwork.
Just as an aside, it was suggested at the town hall meeting about getting, more along the lines of final engineering before we go forward with anything. And, you know, that looks good, except for the fact that it will cost, I think the number we were talking about was the 30,000, it could be 50 or 60,000.
Right, yeah, when we look back.
That we would spend, and then if whatever plan we adopt for raising revenue to do this fails, then we've just spent 60,000 that we can't afford to spend on removing that little bit of doubt we all might have or concern about the figures. You have to, you know, you pay for the certainty, and then you find out you can't do anything, and then you sit back and wish, gee, I wished I had 60,000, I could have crack filled, picked two of the streets off the list.
And like, you know, like Trustee Shaw explained, that's exactly what they're going to do. So, you know, you get your $2.5 million, and you go out and do your cores and do your samples, and the next thing you know, you're moving around. And you're gonna throw the bids out there, and you're gonna ask for certain things, and if it doesn't work, you get a different bid, and you just move things around, maybe, and if it's done good, like I explained, one street can get half a mile of curb, a mile of curb, or one street will get a better surface than what really called for something like that.
Quick question, so
Trustee Locken.
we had talked about $30,000 for the engineer, and I was saying.
Well, that was, when I made that statement, the 30 was just to show that it could cost money, more than what we could do if we didn't pass the referendum, or we go back and tell us, of course, 50.
We'll talk about the money, although these are good questions now, but let me move along. Trustee Daly, you know, first question, what scenario or scope of the work would you feel comfortable in supporting?
And while I do have, and I know we'll get to that, I do have a lot of issues with respect to the financing of any project that we do, and I will get to those when the appropriate time comes. In terms of what I would support, I mean, we are not, in this village, there is no magic Sam's Club or anything coming to move into here to help us raise additional revenue. So what we are gonna have to do is, there's no money in the budget to do this, we're gonna have to get the voters of the people of this town to support whatever way we determine we come up with to pay for this thing. I'm not gonna be short-sighted and tell you, let's do 7 streets and we're gonna have the whole town vote for it, because I guarantee you, the whole town's not gonna vote for it if you tell them you're gonna do only 7 streets. So I think we have to, if we're gonna do anything, we have to do all the streets, because I think it's the only way, realistically, that people will vote for this thing. And it's gonna take a vote to finance a project like this. So I would have to support scenario 3.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Wittenberg.
Scenario 3, and I would support the term of the bond to be either the 10 or 15 year.
I know you provided a lot of input last week at the town hall meeting, so thank you for that. Trustee Schnapper.
As long as we're going for a street project here, I would also have to support scenario 3, because it would also cut out on the fact that If we don't go do the whole thing now, and we have to come along 3 years later, do more streets, and then try to get another bond issue, I think we need to do it all at once. And as far as we talking about the engineering while ago, I think people need to realize that we are dealing with one of the, I believe, one of the top-rated engineering firms in the state, if not beyond the state, and we hope in other states too. Although I'm sure that they don't hire unqualified engineers to work for them, or they wouldn't be at the top of the list where they're at. So.
All right, well, then, and again, I want everybody in the audience and the trustees to understand, I would like to just call for a vote, just a show of support for the scope of the work here. Is not binding on anybody here, and if you change your mind in a month when we have a document to vote on, that's gonna be your right, but just for the sake of advancing the discussion on this topic today, then let me ask for, just for the show of support. It's my understanding then that the consensus of the board is to support the scenario 3 version. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. The next step then, now that we have the scope of the work, we've established how much, at least our very, very best estimate, without getting into it, is $2.5 million to get that done, according to the information that was provided at the town hall. So with respect to $2.5 million, I'd like some input on how to propose to raise that. And I'll start on this side, and Trustee Wittenberg, you had talked about it at the meeting last week, so let me start with you.
Well, I think we've heard throughout our election process, as well as what happened last year with the referendum and the subsequent times before that, that people favor having an infrastructure road bond that's used for those single purposes that would be on a tax bill, and then would be taken off the tax bill when the bond would be retired and paid off. So I would assume that's how we would fund it. And we would go through that process with our either Spear or other company to handle the financing and take us through the process. I do think there's some timing things that could be coming up with the bond market that need to be understood about when we would actually pay for the streets. Because we wouldn't pay, we'd probably pay it in a 3 or a 4 period of time. And Steve had brought that up last week in a sidebar that I had with him. So there is a little variability in our interest cost, and I think we need to be cognizant of that, because as we move out and if rates go up, that may be the variable. It may not be a street engineering issue. It may be that the market tends to drive up the interest rates, and that's where we'll get some variability in how much we pay per month. So we need to be cognizant of that, depending on what we think the rate spread will be. And I'm not an expert on rate spread, but we ought to figure that out what the variability could be in that case.
But primarily, you're comfortable in supporting having a referendum on the ballot in
Absolutely.
March for a road bond for the amount of $2.5 million to be used for these streets.
Correct.
Okay. And, it segues, we've heard from a couple of trustees, but do you have a preference that you're more comfortable supporting with respect to the payoff period?
Yeah, I think paying interest to the bank is my least favorite thing to do, and I would support a 10 or 15 year.
Thank you. Trustee Bailey, on just a way to pay to raise funds?
What I have to say, and it's not gonna be popular here, but I don't support a road bond, and let me explain to you why. This village has been put in a position where, and again, I'll go back to what I just said, we have no new revenue coming into this village, and for the foreseeable future, we have no revenue coming into this village. There is no big parcels of land that are gonna be developed to bring in all kinds of tax revenue. There is no new development coming in anywhere. We have what we have, and we run a tight budget as it is. Now, we can put this Band-Aid and be short-sighted and say, let's just have a road bond, and we'll fix up all the roads right now, and most of the roads are gonna get a crack fill, and I've heard some of this already up here. The problem we have with that is we have millions of dollars in infrastructure that needs to be repaired. These streets, I can't see how the streets that are the same age as the ones that need to be repaved now are gonna make it another 15 years with just some crack fills. And what are we gonna do, I think Trustee Hinshaw, what are we gonna tell those residents on those streets if we have a 15-year bond and in 10 years their street needs to be redone and say, sorry, we don't have the money, we did a road bond. This village needs to find a way to raise revenue in an ongoing basis. Now, there's been talk about depreciating streets. That doesn't raise new revenue. All that does is move money around that we already are getting in. That doesn't raise anything new. What I propose, and it's unpopular, but what I propose is something that will put the burden on people that are outside of Indian Head Park. People that don't live in the town, and that's home rule. And I know I got voted down, and I'll tell you why I support that. Because with home rule, and some of the people that are sitting on this board, when they were running for election last time, talked about, well, we can raise money by putting a nickel on a pack of cigarettes. We can put a nickel on every gallon of gas sold at the gas station. We can tax, or we can put a tax on all the trucks that park over here at night. We can't do that because we're not home rule. That's a way to raise funds on people that pass down Joliet Road that don't live in this town. We can make money off of those people. And it's not just sitting and saying, well, Indian Head Park residents, guess what? Pull out your pocketbook some more, because we're gonna, we need more money. And in 5 years, when Ed comes up and says, guess what? There's a bunch of water mains that need to be repaired. Going, guess what, Indian Head Park residents? We need to have another bond, because we don't have the money still. We gotta raise it again. We need more, pull out your pocketbooks again. This is a way to have an ongoing attempt to raise money. This will bring money into the budget. This will allow us to continue to raise funds. And again, not solely on the, sure, some of us do buy gas up here, but it will be other people will help finance this. We've gotten rid of the LEAF program. We're down a police officer. There's so many things we could go into as to things we don't have, and we're already running a tight budget. So sitting here and saying, well, man, we're just gonna have a road bond and everything's gonna be great in town. It's not. It's not. This is not gonna solve our problem. Yes, some people get new streets, but it's not solving our problem. We need a long-term solution, and that's why I don't support a Band-Aid, and I don't support this short-sightedness. We're in this position today because for the last 15 or 20 years, we haven't had the money. There's been no money to keep doing the roads on an ongoing basis. And I know it's not popular, I know it got voted down, but if the people who get up here, and the people in the audience that were here last time, who said, I'm gonna go knock on doors, I'm gonna be a block captain, I'm gonna do all these things, if they go around and they support home rule, it could pass if people understood why. For some reason, they distrust us up here. I don't know why, and I'm sure you all have your ideas, but trust me, we want to do what's in the best interest of the people, and for my sake, I want to raise funds on the backs of people outside of Indian Head Park, not just keep going back to the taxpayers over and over and over again. So that's what I support.
Thank you. Trustee O'Loughlin.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Brian, do you have any idea if we put something on the ballot, a referendum as far as having home rule, how much money would that bring in? Was there any type of numbers last time?
It would depend on how much you put, what you put on a pack of cigarettes, what you put on a.
Well, I mean, is it 50,000, 60,000 for the first year?
I have no clue, but it would be money. Would it pave our streets in 1 year? I mean, no, it's not going to. But it's a way to bring revenue into this village and to start funding a road program that will have money in it. Not just saying we're going to move money around that we really don't. We're not bringing any revenue. We're going to just move money around on a balance sheet. That's not raising new revenue. That's taking it from somewhere else, and something else is going to have to suffer. So I'm willing to try it. I think it's a good idea. There are a number of towns, other towns around here that do it. We have explored, things such as red light cameras, which again aren't popular, but things like that. We can't do any of those things because we're not home rule. So I think we got to try it.
So if you were gonna do that, then are you saying that will fund scenario three right away?
Oh, God, no, I told you it would. I just said it would.
Okay, so let's take your idea further then. So we would have to do something like this first, right?
I don't support it. I understand what you're saying.
Hold on a second, okay? We need to build, for whatever reason, like you said, we need to build credibility that we can go out and get money approved by the voters and take the step to do the capital improvements. We can argue why it happened, why it didn't happen, whose fault it is until forever. We need to gain credibility with whomever in the citizenry has questioned us and voted it down 2 or 3 times. When we build credibility through a road bond, and we do the project under budget, and we go ahead and do this in a way that everybody feels is credible and a good follow-through, maybe people will look at home rule differently, Brian.
I don't agree, because look out in the audience right here. How many people are here compared to what were here last week? This place is a ghost town compared to here.
Okay.
Because people all think, they all said, we're gonna have a road bond, our streets are gonna be done, we don't care anymore. And that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna pave some people's streets, and they're gonna figure, well, board, you figure it out. You figure out how to come up with
But
the
that's
money.
where I disagree. People
Well,
realize.
where are the
Brian-
people?
Brian, people realize that this is a permanent issue,
I,
okay? They understand we do not have the money in the budget. We are not ignorant to what is going on with the numbers in our budget, okay? The people out there are not ignorant to what reality is here. They have a trust issue, whether you agree or disagree with that fact. We have to build the trust. It is going to be an evolution. It is not gonna happen overnight. So can we take the step? Can we get on the same page? Can we deliver what we need to do from a tactical standpoint? If we do a good job on that, maybe we can convince them to do the next step. Because we can't go out for home rule right now and fund this program. I can't go out and use that mechanism for $2.5 million right now. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to waste time arguing about why anybody did anything for the last 3 years, because we'll spend all night doing that. So let's get the money, let's do the project, let's do it the right way, let's start managing the situation in a different way, so we can make people believe it with facts and figures and metrics that we are managing this village in the way that we need to manage the village. That's why there are questions, Brian, not because they are just making things up in their brains and manufacturing things, because that's how they truly feel.
well, you
So,
may, you
let's-
ran, and
let's
I,
get-
I,
let's
I've
get
never
down to
heard people
business
tell
here.
me that they distrust me. Never heard that. I've been elected here twice.
Okay.
Nobody's ever come up to me and said, I don't trust you, I don't trust certain people on this board. I've never heard that, and I've been on the board almost 7 years.
Let's
So,
get-
I hear,
Let's get to the
I've heard from the
essence.
people who ran last time, everybody distrusts you. I don't know who that everybody is, okay? Now, I understand you wanna support a bond. I'm not supporting it. I'm not gonna put the burden on the taxpayers of this town. I'm just one vote on the board. Everyone else will probably support it. I'm just telling you that's where I stand,
Okay, well,
like it or not.
that's good. Then we'll have to go on with taking the vote for the
Let's go
public.
to,
Fine.
thank you, trustee O'Loughlin.
Yes, so after that, yes, I am in agreement for a referendum on the March ballot. I think it's something that we do need, and I think the home rule would be a great second step, but right now we do need to do something as far as the streets go.
How long,
I would say
assuming we're
10
to
to
do
15
that?
years.
Trustee Walsh?
I agree with many things that trustee Bailey said. I've obviously been on the board for, I think, 11 years now, or 12 years, close to whatever it is. But I do agree at this point that a bond referendum would be appropriate. I think it's paramount that we allocate resources to the roads, and then for other saving techniques, hopefully we can allocate other resources to other projects. So I would support a bond referendum. Getting back to the 10, 15, 20 year, I think we have to be somewhat flexible in that, and as much as I agree with trustee Wittenberg, I hate interest. There is going to be a burden on individuals in this town, many of them who have fixed income, on their tax bills. And we have to be very conscious of the fact that, we can make it 10 years, but if everyone's tax bills go up, it's gonna show up on the ballot what the amount is that it's going to cost them. And, it's more important that we get this passed in many ways than to work, I don't want to say worry about interest, but, if all of a sudden it shows that someone's tax bill is going up by $1,000, they don't care about whether or not it's 10 years, 15 or 20 years. So I think we have to get a really good handle on the reasonable amount that would be appropriate for the tax bills. And maybe there's some flexibility, maybe get a 16-year balloon, maybe there's other options in there. I don't think we're getting to that point, we have to discuss that. But I think we'd be very careful to make sure that it is a program that not only the citizens will go along with, but they'll vote in. Now, getting back to what Brian said, you know, I would agree with what Brian said. I don't know if there was a lot of distrust of us up here. You know, the guys, like I said, I've been on this board a long time, and I've always felt a lot of pride in what we've done. I think there's always going to be people who distrust government. I think the biggest problem we face is people don't like taxes. And, you know, that is going to be the biggest hurdle. The other hurdle we have, and I'm sure the mayor will tell